I need to share my screen. Good morning, everybody. Bear with me a moment while I figure out how to get this thing to show my screen. I moved this box around and now I can't see anything. Oh, no, I'm good. There it is. All right, sorry about that, folks. Hopefully you guys can see my screen and you can hear us. And I see someone saying yes, that you can see and hear, so that's good. So today on the phone, you'll have myself, Erica, and then we also have Corey House and Joan Troy, and they're both going to be talking about the check-in procedures from the station guide. And I'm sure all you guys remember those station guides that, you know, from last year and the year before, so you should still have those, and we're going to talk about the proper check-in procedures, and then we're going to talk about setting up and installing SOSA, and then we're going to be doing some live demos. So normally we record a little demo and play it in the presentation. This time I'm just going to switch straight over to the SOSA application and show you things directly within the application. So it'll be bigger on your screen, it'll probably look a little bit better. All right, so let's get started here. Move this down. I gotta get some stuff out of my way so I can see.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Okay, so this first slide here, we're just describing the difference, you know, between SOSA and OVRD and what their definitions are. Obviously, SOSA is a SEAMS one-stop voting application, and all of you are pretty much familiar with that. You've used it many times. OVRD is the on-site voter registration database, which is really just SOSA converted to election day mode. OVRD is an electronic poll book. And then just some information here about where you can find the administrator guides and the user guides for SOSA and OVRD, and they're in FileZilla at that path listed there. All right, so now we'll just talk about running the wizard, and in a moment we'll just run through a demo of running the wizard. But in order to install SOSA and OVRD, you have to run the wizard in order to create the executable file that you're going to use to install. You run the wizard in the One-Stop System Manager application, and that lets you set up your default settings and creates the file. You should not run the wizard until after all of your geocode changes are complete and your ballot styles are enabled. And I think, you know, the majority of you know that already, but we can't stress that enough. If you have to make geocode changes after running the wizard, it's going to cause you a little more work trying to get all your machines updated. So if you need to install training to use training your poll workers and things like that, you still use One-Stop System Manager, but you're going to change the database you're logging into to training instead of production. And then when you log into the training database, the username is CBE admin, and the default password, which everyone should be familiar with. If you're not, just put in a help desk ticket and we'll help you out. But you won't be able to log into training mode using your normal SEAMS login, so just bear that in mind. All right, and this is just to, you know, quickly show you how to log into production and training. So you'll see the screen on the left, that's your production database, and then to log into training, you'll see something similar to the image on the right. Now, you guys won't have training in county in parentheses or where it says training underscore Alamance. Yours will just be training and training. But because of our test environments here, they had to set it up that way for us. So yours will just say training and training. And so that's how you can log into System Manager for either one. All right, so now I'm going to just run you through a brief demo on running the wizard. And again, this is the One-Stop System Manager application. So we're going to go up to SOSA OVRD functions, new election setup wizard. Oh, and I don't have a future board meeting date, so I'm going to have to go put that in first. So we'll cancel out of here. And then I have to go to Tools, Board Meeting Manager, and then I'm going to put in a meeting date. And I think I'm probably just doing this one sometime around Election Day. This is a video from a past webinar, so obviously it's not showing the most current election we're having, but you'll get the idea. So now that we've got that board meeting date in, it'll let us proceed. So we hit next, we select our election, and then this is a default. Doesn't matter what you pick here, this is just going to be the default location that the SOSA machines will be set to. Both options will be available as long as you do a full install. And so now these are where you can set various options that allow users to cancel votes and to prevent users from votes updates. You're almost always going to want those checked, and then all four below that. And that screen has changed a tiny bit. Unfortunately, like I said, this is an older video, but the only change on that previous screen was the form type for those folks who want to create their own custom forms. There is functionality for that now. That's the default location if you're doing disconnected transfers, and this is where you're going to save the executable file to. Some people save it to their desktop. Some folks put it straight to a USB stick. Doesn't matter. The install file is always available out on your server, so if there's a failure getting it to wherever you want to save it to, you can always get it off the server. And if all those settings and everything were correct, you just start the wizard, and then it'll go through processing these steps. Okay, I guess that's where I ended it. So what happens with that, it'll go through the various steps. There's 3 steps total. You know, creates the database, and then it sends it to the media, and then it'll pop up a message saying the election setup is complete, and the executable file will be wherever you told it to save it. So on your stick or on your desktop or whatever other location. And then from there, you start loading your SOSA machines. And we'll briefly go over that. So like I mentioned, you know, when the wizard's done, the file will be in the save location. And here's the location to find it on your server. If for some reason you weren't able to get it on the stick or couldn't find it wherever you saved it, you can always go to that location on your server and find it there. Then what you do is you take your USB stick, plug it into your laptop, and double-click the sosaprod.exe or sosatrain.exe file, depending on which one you're trying to do. Sometimes it's a good idea, instead of double-clicking, to right-click the file and say Run as Administrator, just to ensure that you have the administrator rights and the system is aware of that and doesn't later tell you that, you know, you need admin rights. So sometimes if you're having install problems, do right-click Run as Administrator, and it may get you further. So the full installation is what you're going to want to put on your laptops, you know, that you're going to send out to your one-stop sites and polling places. The partial installs used in your office for your Seams workstations, and that's basically, you know, the connected only county mode. So you wouldn't be able to do, you know, anything local or hybrid because it doesn't create the local database with a partial install. If you're going to be using OVRD after you've installed SOSA, you can immediately convert those dedicated OVRD machines using the tool, or you can just log into local mode and run the conversion. All right, and so now this is what's going to happen once you get SOSA installed. The first time you log in, these are the things you're going to see. first, that image on the left, it's going to tell you that, okay, there's no election site, there's no validation status, and there's no ID. So when you click OK to that message, it'll open up SOSA, take you to the main screen, and then it'll pop up a message saying you need to select a site. And when you hit OK to that message, you get the screen on the right that shows you all the options, and basically you're just going to select a site name from that very first drop down at the top. Make sure all the other settings are the way you want them, and then just hit OK. And that will have your machine ready to go for voting, or ready to go to be validated. So once you've set the site, now you've got to validate the machine. So you have to log into county mode. You can't validate a machine in local mode, so make sure that first login to SOSA is county mode, so that after you set your site and everything, you don't have to log out and log back in to be in county. So you can only do the validation in county mode. And you need to do that validation in your BOE office. You know, don't wait to do that out at the site, because it may not have connection back to your server. And if the machine is not validated, you will not be able to vote anyone. And just an FYI, there is no validation for OVRD machines. In OVRD machines, you'll set an ID. If you're going to be using provisional voting, you have to set this unique ID over here. All right, and so now that we're validated, we're ready to start voting people, and this is just giving you an idea of what the SOSA main screen looks like. You know, most of you have seen the screen many times before, so you're familiar with it. But all the functions are available. You know, these icons at the top are enabled, the ones that can be. And then if you have a live network connection, whether in county or local mode, data will transfer back and forth. Otherwise, if you're running in disconnected or local mode with no network, you're going to manually perform transfers either throughout the day or at the end of the day. All right, and then this is just kind of giving you an idea of what you'll see in SOSA when you click the Tools tab. So this is where you can find some of the extra things like the street search, information about sites, returning a by mail ballot. You know, if someone shows up at your one-stop site with a ballot that was mailed to them, you can log that return here. And then we have our reports, the post-election audit, which is used at the very end of one-stop voting, and then your transfer options. All right, and so now I'm going to turn you over to Corey and Joan, and they're going to start talking about the check-in procedures from the station guide. And then, you know, at certain points, I'll jump back in and show you a live demo. We'll switch over to my SOSA and we'll, you know, show you live demo and what it looks like in real time.
Okay. I think the first slide is the key to everything that we're about to go over. This is the chunky little section of the statute that is the core of the check-in procedure. Everything that we're about to go over is derived or is given authority by this section of the statute. So it's something that you want to keep handy.
Okay, at this slide, we have the check-in procedures, and there are 8 steps. And the next slide, we're going to go through each of these eight steps. Okay, so for steps 1 through 3, for the first one, you want to ask the voter to state their name. It would be the last, first, and middle name. And then for the second step, it would be to state their residential address. And on the third step will be to state the party affiliation.
And of course, that part is only applicable during a partisan primary. You're not going to need the party affiliation except during the partisan primary.
Right, so you will be using that this election.
All right, so the best language is provided in the book. You all know that Ronnie is very particular about how we state these things. So We begin with please state your last name, first name, and middle name. All right, sometimes, and you all remember this, I'm sure, people want to show the photo ID. That's not part of the process, so you will politely decline the voter ID and say that it is not required to vote in this election.
And the only time a voter will have to show their ID is for a have an ID requirement, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
All right, if the voter is genuinely unable to speak or has some sort of an impediment, we're going to be very patient. If they're shy, you'll ask them to repeat their name, but if they actually can't speak, then it is permissible to ask them to write it down.
Yeah, and if you're having, if your poll worker's having trouble and the voter's really being uncooperative, you can feel free to send them to the help station.
Okay, so in step 2, you would search for the voter's name on the voter list. The official should check that there are no similar names that will result in selecting the wrong voter.
Don't confuse Susan Johnson with Suzanne Johnston.
Yeah. If you're not sure, don't be afraid to ask them to spell their name.
And here are some helpful suggestions. If you're unable to locate a voter, like Erica mentioned, you can ask them to spell their name. You can ask if their name has changed, if it has been hyphenated. If you're still unable to locate the voter's name, you will refer the voter to the help station.
Yeah, and the wild card is the % sign. If you're not sure what the wild card, how that works, you can use the % sign. It's a wild card. You can use that anywhere in the name. All right, so now what I'm going to do is switch over to SOSA, and I'm going to show you guys how to search for a voter. So by default, you're given the name and the birth date fields. If you need more information to search on, like address, you can check this more criteria box at the top, and it'll bring down the address fields. So for this one, we're going to search for a Brian Martin. He's come in. He wants to vote. Now, once you put the name in, you can either hit the enter key or you can click the search button up here. I think enter is easier when you're doing data entry. So here he is, Brian Martin, and you just want to verify that that's the correct Brian. Now, if we weren't sure how his first name was spelled, like maybe it was B-R-Y-A-N instead of B-R-I, you can do a wild card and say B-R%A-N, and it would pull up everybody in between that either has an I, an E, a Y, and any random letter the percent can represent. So I'll just use a % sign in a last name. So we'll do BRO % and hit enter. And so now this will bring back everybody whose last name starts with BRO. In this case, there's way too many for it to return, so I have to narrow my search. So I could say D%. Maybe I'm not sure, how to spell their first name, and then I can, look through the list. But I just wanted to show you an example of using the wild card. So, and it can be used in any of those name fields. If you do a search and you can't find them, maybe by their first name, you could do the last name and maybe a date of birth. And so now I see, okay, well, here's a Brown. Is this you? Or are you this Dana Brown? And if it's the correct person, then you're good to go to start voting. Again, if you need to search by address, you can use any of these fields here. I can pull up everybody on Piney View. Now, if I just hit search, it shows me everybody that's on Piney View. So, the other thing to keep in mind when doing searches is less and more. I mean, less is more. The more information you put in these fields, the more that's narrowing down and that could prevent you from finding the person, you know, if maybe they've changed their name or now their name's hyphenated, whatever the case may be. So just, you know, be careful. If you're really having trouble, do just a basic last name search and see if you can find them in the list. Also, there is an option to show removed voters. Right now, I don't have that turned on, but if you want to see removed voters in your results, then you can check that box, do a search, and see this first person here, now they're removed. They can't vote. You'll see the issue button is grayed out. A removed voter cannot vote. They could do a provisional, but that's all you can do to get around that in SOSA. The clear button, obviously, up here clears all your previous searches. And then, you know, you have the search voters button here. You can't perform a search unless you have one criteria field filled in. So that's the basics of doing a search in SOSA.
Okay, so if you're still unable to locate the voter's name, you should fill out a help referral form and direct them to the help station. They can still cast a provisional ballot, and also during this time, since it's the early voting period, they can go through same-day registration.
Okay, so you're going to compare the stated name to what you've got in the voter record. And if it doesn't match, you're going to ask the voter whether his name has changed or her name has changed. Confirm that there's not a reasonable variation in the name, like Susan, Suzanne. If the voter's name in the record is not current, you can update the voter's name. And the voter will sign in the appropriate section on the vote authorizing document or change of name and address form to have the County Board of Elections process the name change. Okay.
In step 4, you would ask the voter to state their address. So the best language would be to please state your residential address. Again, if you're having difficulty in hearing what the voter is saying, you can make reasonable accommodations to ask the voter to write their address. And if the voter is uncooperative, you can refer them to the help station.
And this is another one of those, this is another rare instance in which the voter may say he or she cannot speak. They have a genuine impediment. It's not unwillingness, it's disability. They are allowed to show you their driver's license in that instance so that you can obtain the name and the address.
And this just goes into if you have a uncooperative voter, they will not state their address. Here's a little statement that you can say or have your election official say, and then refer them to the help station.
And again, you're going to do as you did with the name. You're going to compare the address stated by the voter to the address in the voter list. The purpose for doing this is to confirm an eligible ballot style. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I got click happy.
No, that's okay. All right. When you don't have a match, you've got to confirm that you pulled up the right record. Make sure to double check on the name. If you do have the right record, ask whether she's moved. And if she did move, ask for her previous address. And if the previous address matches the address in the voter record, ask for the date of the move. For the primary, April 8th is going to be key because you're going to remember that if the person has voted, the person moved before April 8th, that means that they have resided 30 days prior to the date of election in a different precinct. If they are after April 8th, then they have not resided.
We'll go into that.
Yeah,
we'll go into that in the next few slides.
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll get into that in the next few slides a little bit.
Okay, so this is where we address the move 30 days or more days to address within the county. And for this webinar, we're focusing on one stop in particular. So if the voter moves 30 or more days before the date of the election, the voter's address should be updated, and the voter giving the ballot style for which they're eligible based on the updated address. Okay, so if the move is less than 30 days to an address within a county, the voter's address should not be updated. The voter should be issued a ballot based on their previous address and a voter registration form to update their address in a county for future elections.
All right, regardless of whether the voter is presenting to vote during one-stop absentee voting or on election day, the voter is no longer qualified to vote in the county if they moved more than 30 days from another county. If she insists on voting, the voter should be referred to the help station and offered a provisional ballot. Now, again, if they moved less than 30 days, the proper precinct is still based on the previous address. So the voter is still eligible to vote a regular ballot at the voting site based on the previous precinct.
All right, and so now I'll show you a quick little demo. Where am I going? Okay, so we're gonna update Mr. Brian Grant. He's come in to vote. We verified his name and we found him, and he says, oh, that's not my address anymore, I've moved. So now we want to update him. So to do that, we're going to hit Update Voter Reg up here in the registration section, and it's going to bring up this data entry screen where we can make any changes that we need to make. And we're going to adjust his address because he's moved to 1243 Pony Farm. And then this is a shortcut I like to use instead of having to type all these other fields. Once you've got the street and the house number in, just hit View Street Range, find the correct range, double click it, and it'll populate everything else for you. So he's moved to 1243 Pony Farm Road. Now I'm going to show you if he told us that he hasn't lived here for 30 days or more prior to the election. So he says, no, I just moved there yesterday. So when we put in 4/10 as the move date and try to move on to the next step, it's going to tell us that change is not permitted when the move date is less than 30 days before the election. So are you sure you wish to continue and lose the resident's address change? So if I continue and say yes, then it's going to pretend like I never put in this new address, and it's going to revert back to his old one. For this example, I'm going to say no because I want to change my radio button up here to yes. Now saying, yeah, okay, he has been here for 30 days. So I just wanted to give you an example of how that'll look if the answer is no.
And so if the answer is no, that's when you will give the voter a voter registration form to update their address.
Correct. And then once you hit review, it's going to ask you the default mode for the voting method. It's going to default to whatever you had set in the wizard, in this case in person, but if it was curbside, I can select that, no big deal. Say in person select, and then this is where it prints the form. That was interesting. And then you can go ahead and hit vote. Once the form is printed, you have them sign it and carry on. I'm just going to cancel this vote because I was just, trying to show you I'm not going to actually vote. Well, let's just vote them. What the heck? Let's try. Okay. And so once they're voted, you'll see down here, information showing that they had voted.
All right, step 6. Again, for partisan primaries only, you're going to ask the voters to state their party affiliation. If the voter is unaffiliated, the voter has a choice of the party with which the voter wishes to vote, or if they're unaffiliated, they may also choose to vote a nonpartisan ballot.
Okay.
Okay, so as John was saying, if the voter is registered, unaffiliated, and presents to vote in a partisan election, the best language here is what is your primary ballot preference? And since the Green Party was just recognized and acknowledged as a state party now, you would include that there. So It should be phrased, what is your primary ballot preference? And you may choose the ballot styles and whatever is available for that election.
Okay, so now I'm going to show you a little demo of what this looks like when you are pulling up an unaffiliated voter. So I've had this young lady, Alicia Harris, come in who wants to vote. I do a search, I find her, and I see that her party's unaffiliated, and these are her two possible ballot styles. So when I go ahead and, well, this person, as you'll notice, this person is inactive. And so my issue button is disabled because it means that there's something going on with her address. And we need an address update for her. So let me just go ahead and hit Update Voter Reg. I'm going to say she's still at the same address, and that is possible. So SEAMS will allow you to handle that if they say, yeah, that is my address. You know, maybe the person was out of town or out of the country temporarily and never got the mailings, who knows. But at any rate, if it is the same address, you can continue. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and say Review. And now it's going to say, okay, this is an unaffiliated voter, so now you need to select which party ballot they want. And Ms. Harris says that she would like a Democratic ballot. And so you would just select that here, hit the select button, and again, the voting method. And then it's going to print your one-stop form. I don't know why it has to change my screen like that. A little bit annoying. So then it grays everything out, and if everything was correct, then you just go ahead and vote. So if they're unaffiliated, they're going to get that party pop-up when you go ahead and continue on to the review step in the process.
Okay, so if the voter desires to vote different party ballot than their affiliated party, here's the best language to use in that case that you could give to your election officials. Your voter record indicates that you are registered as a blank. You are only eligible to participate in a primary election of the political party for which you are affiliated. And once again, you would fill out the help referral form and send them on their way to the help station where they can cast a provisional ballot.
Yeah, and we all know in a primary this happens where somebody comes in and says, I was never a Republican. Why does it say I am? I want to vote Democrat. So, you know, you can get around that. And here's where we're going to show you how to print the help referral form so that you can then send that voter to the help station, and it already have their, you know, the majority of the information available. So for this case, we're going to Miss Annie Harris. See, she has no ballot style, so she can't vote. And she's registered as a Democrat. Maybe she was really a Republican and said, I want the Republican ballot. I've never been a Democrat, you know, whatever the case may be. So we could select her record, and then we can say print referral. And there's two options. You can either print a blank form and fill it out yourself, or do print selected record. So that'll create the help referral form with all of this voter's information already filled in on the form. And then you can just give them that and send them to the help station. Now you won't be able to see the form because it, you know, it goes straight to the printer. It doesn't even show on screen or anything. It just goes straight to the printer. But hopefully you guys have seen that form before. So that's how to create the help referral form.
All right, so you're going to step 7, confirm the voter status. Check the voter's record to determine whether there are voter status issues that require the voter to provide additional information or documentation before a regular ballot can be issued.
Okay, so this is where we go into the voter status overview, and you can have an active voter, inactive, removed, denied, temporary. And in the next slide, we're going to focus in particular on inactive, and that's usually due to an address issue.
Right. Yeah, active and inactive voters, you know, they can be voted in SOSA, removed, denied, they cannot. Their only options would be provisional ballots. And temporary folks should be able to vote as well, as long as they haven't already voted with an FPCA or UOCAVA.
All right, so the voter is inactive, and the preferred language is, have you provided us with the address where you have resided for at least 30 days as of the date of the election, and do you receive mail at this address?
Okay, so if a voter is in an active status, you have to update their voter registration status, even if the address matches in the system compared to what the voter is stating on that day. It could be a different mailing address, so you want to verify all that in SOSA. On the next slide, Erica will perform a live demo for updating the status of an inactive voter.
Yeah, and you kind of saw that in that example I did earlier with Miss Alicia Harris, where she was inactive and I had to update her address before it would let me continue. So we'll look at that again, and this time we're going to work with Amanda Harris. And she has a valid address here, but she is showing inactive. So for whatever reason, mail has not been getting to her at that address, and she went into an inactive status. So again, if they're inactive, the only thing you can do is update voter reg. You can't use the issue button because you've got to do something with their address and get a good address for them. So we'll say update voter reg. And again, here's our screen. And then we can come in here and put in the new address. For this lady, it's 246 Core. And it's Core Road in Richland. So all that is filled in. And yes, we're going to say yes, it was more than 30 days since she moved there. And so now we'll say review. It's going to ask for our default voting method. ARG. All right, and so then you'll get that form, print it out, have them look it over, sign it, and then you can go ahead and click vote. And it'll show down here at the bottom how they have voted. So anytime you see down in that corner that a voter is inactive, your only option in SOSA is the Update Voter Reg button. So just bear that in mind. And, you know, you saw it showed little icons and it said they were inactive. So it gives you a good indication, you know, of what the issue is.
Okay, so the record indicates the voter has already voted. Here is some language that you can use to explain to the voter that they can cast a provisional ballot. In this case, you refer them once again to the help station.
All right, and now we're going to show you what that looks like. And I've got a couple examples here. I'm going to pull up someone who voted on a SOSA machine, and then I'm going to pull up someone who had mailed in an absentee ballot. So Amy Baker is our first person, and she voted on a SOSA machine. All right, and it was Amy Rebecca. And as you can see down here, it says she's voted, and it gives the information on where and when. And then you'll notice again, the issue button is grayed out, and so is the update voter reg button. So, you know, if worst case scenario, you needed to vote this person for some reason again, they'd only be able to do a provisional. Unless the vote, obviously, you can cancel the vote if necessary, but if this were the absentee ballot one, that's not as easy, because you have to do that in voter view. So now I'm going to pull up somebody who returned a mailed absentee ballot. So Deborah Walring, I see that she's already voted, and well, this one has an application number, so now I know that it says Civ, that this was a mailed ballot that was returned. And again, you can't vote her. Issue is grayed out and update is grayed out. So this person, you know, you would just have to say to them, we see here that you already returned a mailed absentee ballot. You won't be able to vote today.
Okay. Say the record indicates that a HAVA ID is required, and a first-time voter who at the time of their initial voter registration did not provide the North Carolina driver's license number or the last four of their social, or who provided a number that could not be validated, are now required to show that identification when they vote. Now, it doesn't have to be a photo ID. The requirement for first-time voters to show ID is a requirement of the Help America Vote Act, HAVA, which is a federal law. Inacceptable forms of HAVA ID include a current and valid photo identification or a copy of one of the following documents to show the name and address of the voter. This could be a utility bill, a bank statement, government check, paycheck, or other government-issued document. So, our records show that you need to present an ID today. This means that you are a first-time voter who has not yet provided verifiable ID. Under the Help America Vote Act, you are required to show one of the following types of ID to an election official the first time you present to vote. And again, you're going to go over with them what kinds of documents are acceptable for this purpose.
All right, and now I'm going to show you what that looks like in SOSA. So Miss Amy Taylor has come in and wanted to vote. And when we pull her up, we can see down here that, all right, she's got the green check, we can vote her, but now we have this little like driver's license picture down here with an eye on it. And if you hover over it, it says voter needs to provide ID. So this is someone who, you know, didn't have a DL or SSN or didn't provide one, and therefore didn't provide any HAVA ID. So for the first time, they've got, I'm getting tongue-tied here. So the first time they vote, they've got to show ID. And you'll see this little icon on anybody who has to show ID. And so what happens is now when we go to hit issue, it's going to pop up this screen and ask us, okay, so which type of HAVA ID did they provide you? And then you would just select the appropriate ID type from this list. I would think most people probably do a driver's license, but some folks do, utility bills or bank statements, whatever. Whatever they give you, you select it from this list. You say select. This person happens to be an unaffiliated voter, so it wants to know what ballot she's going to get. And as you can see here, her only option is the Republican ballot. So we'll select that. And then our in-person. And then it just pops the screen up to verify everything is correct. And then we'll say vote. And so what now will happen is when this record, gets back over to your county database, this person will be flagged as, ID provided, and it'll list the type of ID on their voter view record that they provided, and they won't be asked to show ID again.
Hey, Erica?
Yes.
While you're on that screen, can you search for somebody else and just do the issue and show the difference in clicking on the up at the top or clicking on the little drop down?
Yep. I knew that from earlier. Okay, so I don't want to see my removed voters anymore. So as you can see, you can turn that show remove voters on and off at your leisure, whatever you want to do. All right, so the issue button, you'll notice it's kind of a two-part button here. If you click on this top part, it's always going to do the default method, which in this case is in person. Or you can click on the bottom with the drop-down arrow, and then you have either one to choose from. So I could say issue curbside right here, and then I don't get that pop-up saying, which, do you want curbside or in person? So if you hit the issue button, the top part of it, then you may still get that pop-up. But if you use the drop-down and specifically select which voting method you want, it'll keep that.
So if the voter does not have acceptable ID under HAVA, Here is some best language to use. And then you would just, once again, they can cast a provisional ballot. And, I just want to reiterate that in any case, any voter, if you run into issues, they can always cast a provisional ballot and still have the opportunity to vote. And you would just refer them to the help station.
And the person at the help station is going to give them the information that they need to, about how to make sure that that ballot is counted, which is going to be to provide the ID to the County Board of Elections by a time certain. I think it's the day before canvass, or is the day of canvass. At any rate, it's the close of business the 9th day after Election Day.
So if the voter has no eligible ballot style, once again, they can cast a provisional ballot, and you would refer them to the help station.
Yeah, and these are just various statements you can use, preferred language.
Okay, so now you're at the end of the process, and having gone through all of the foregoing steps, the voter has stated her name, address, if applicable, party affiliation, if applicable, HAVA. So the official, having identified, selected, and if applicable, updated the voter's name and address, is now prepared to announce that the voter is eligible and issue a vote authorizing document.
Right. So basically in SOSA at this point, you can hit the vote button.
Okay, so that's exactly what John just said, steps 1 and 2. The election official will state that the voter is duly registered to vote and issue the voter a vote authorizing document.
Ta-da!
And this is a statement of eligibility to vote, and this is where the election official will sign as the witness. In the next few slides, Erica will give live demos for different scenarios.
All right, so the first thing I was going to show you is just how to vote someone. We've kind of done that a little bit already, but we'll just pull somebody else. Let's see, what kind of name do I want to do? Let's see how many Troys we have.
Oh, my.
All right, so Danica LaVon Troy has come in. We've asked her name, her address. Everything matches up. Everything looks good. So we can go ahead and hit issue. And then it's because she's an unaffiliated voter, as you'll see here, it's going to ask what ballot style she wants. Her only option is Republican, so we select that. And then in our voting method, we say select. It brings us to this screen here. Now, if for some reason, they said, oh, I got married and my name has changed, or, oh, I need to update my address, you can hit this update voter button and it'll enable those fields to make changes. Then you would just hit review, make sure your ballot style is still correct, your voting method. Then it's going to print the form. And then you'd be able to hit the vote button. And that's all there is to it. So that's how to simply vote someone. And now what I'm going to do is show you what happens if somebody comes in and they're not registered at all. So I'm going to use one of my favorite Disney characters, Lightning McQueen. So Lightning McQueen has rolled up in his fancy red sports car and wants to vote. And so we are going to try to search for him. And potential voters, nothing. So he's not registered. So we would say something to him like, we show that you're not registered. Would you like to register today so you can vote? He says yes. So now what we can do is hit this new voter reg button. And it's going to bring us to the same screen we're used to seeing with all their information on it, but now this one's empty and all the fields are enabled. And so we're just going to continue to go ahead and put in the information. All right, and we're going to just pick a street here.
And Erica, while you're doing that, just a reminder to try to find the voter first, because sometimes we've noticed that voters come in and know they can register, and they get around their party. You know, they'll choose another party. So do your best to search for them when you're doing this. You know, possibly, you know, do the percent sign on the first name, or just try your best to make sure they're not already registered.
That's a good point, Amanda. Thank you. And people have done that. They're like, they don't like the party they are. They want to do something else. So they're like, I need to register. We've seen it happen. All the fields with red text on this screen are required. So you've got to make sure those are filled in. You know, if they provide any of these other fields, certainly you can fill that information in as well. Once all of our required fields are filled in, then we can continue on with the registration. And so we're going to hit the review button. And so with a same-day registration, they've got to provide a proof of residency. So they need to provide one of these HAVA documents that has their current name and address on it. And so we'll just say that Mr. McQueen gave us his driver's license. We'll hit select. Now it wants to know, because he's unaffiliated, which ballot style. So we'll say Republican. And our voting method. It's printing the form, and my screen disappears. All right, and then everything's grayed out. If you made an error or typoed something, you can go back and fix it. Otherwise, if everything is correct, then you can go ahead and hit vote. All right, and now I'm going to show you how to do a new or an existing provisional. Whoops, wrong button. I was trying to clear. All right. So the first person we're going to do is an existing voter. So Lois Young has come in, and we find her here, but she shows as no ballot. And she is insisting that she should be able to vote and insists on us giving her a ballot. So at this point, the only thing we can do is issue her a provisional. Because she's already registered, we can click this existing voter provisional button. It's going to bring up the same screen you're used to seeing. You can change, update any information on this screen as you need to. If everything's the same, you know, you can leave it as it is. And then you're going to hit next. And it's going to show you on the left side all the information that was input on the first screen. And then on this screen, we're going to have to fill in a provisional voting reason and a ballot style issued. Again, if it's red in text, it's a required field. So you have to have that filled in before you can move on. And so in this case, we're going to say that, you know, she insists that she should be getting a Republican ballot. So I'm going to choose provisional reason incorrect party. I'm going to say her party voted is Republican. And then based on her address, it's automatically populating what ballot style she should get. If she wanted some other different ballot style, then you can absolutely select that from the drop down. So if she didn't want R9, she said that I should get R15 or something, you know, you can change that and override it as necessary. But it will default to the ballot style available based on their address. So once you have those fields filled in, you're going to hit review. It's going to print out the provisional application. And then it's going to bring you to a summary screen where you can see all the information that was input the first screen. Here's the information on the second screen. Here's our jurisdictional info. And then we can go ahead and say vote. And then it'll print the instruction form that you hand to the voter. And so for the second one, I'm going to show you how to do a new provisional. So we've searched for, we're going to search for Cruz Ramirez. She's a good friend of Lightning McQueen. And we'll hit enter to search, and I got nothing back. Now I might be able to say like C%, like Amanda was saying, try multiple searches to make sure that they're really not here. You know, I don't see her under there. Maybe it's a K for Cruz instead of a C. So I can put K in. Still didn't find her. So now what I can do is just say new voter provisional. And then I'm going to go ahead, like we did earlier with the same day registration. We're just going to fill in all the registration info on this screen. Obviously, you guys wouldn't just be randomly picking streets out of here. You'll have actual addresses that you'll be using, but for this case, I'm just picking what I can. All right, so we've got an address in there. We need to pick a party, and we'll just choose that one. They didn't provide any of this other stuff. I almost forgot. So I was about to hit next, and I hadn't checked my citizenship box. So if any of your required fields aren't filled in, when you hit next, it's going to tell you that you're missing a required field. So I'm going to go and hit yes. Now I can hit next and proceed. And it's important to understand what this message is saying here at the top. Ultimately, they do not have to provide ID. So there is a no ID button available down here. However, you know, if this person has never registered before, they haven't satisfied a HAVA requirement. So, you know, it may be possible to, you know, get that information now instead of later. You know, if you can do that delicately, if you think that maybe they wouldn't mind showing you that ID. But they do not have to show it to be able to vote at this point. But just make sure you read this message because it says, and may potentially need to show a form of ID as a first-time registrant. You know, you want everybody's vote, you know, hopefully to get counted. So whatever you can do to facilitate your board being able to count that vote, try to do that if you can do it without upsetting anyone. In this case, we'll just go ahead and say no ID, because that may be what most of you end up having to do. So we'll say no ID. And then it, you know, basically on this summary says down here, no ID provided. So now we're going to say our provisional voting reason was no record of registration, because we couldn't find them. They're not registered. So by default, it's issued the R030 ballot style. Again, if it was a different ballot style they needed, you can override that with this drop-down menu. So once that's filled in, we hit review. It's going to print the form. And then we can go ahead and vote. And again, there's a previous button here. If you made a mistake on something, you can always go back and fix it, which you should do before you hit the vote button. You know, make sure everything's correct before you hit vote. And so we've looked through all this, everything's okay, we hit vote, it prints the form, and that's it. So just remember, you know, you've got these provisional buttons up here, and then this is your same day registration here, the new voter registration. This isn't available on election day in OVRD. This is only something that can be done during one-stop voting. Okay, so that's all the you know, technical stuff you need to know. And now we'll just go over a few housekeeping issues. Make sure that you've set up your election assignments for your one-stop sites. You've probably gotten emails from us over the past couple days about doing this. Because that information shows in the polling place search, it needs to be there. And if you go and find that none of your one-stop sites are showing up, it's probably because you haven't added the election assignments. So just make sure you do that. You can do that in One Stop System Manager. You just click on the Site Manager button on the left. You select a site from the list, and then you'll have an election assignment tab. You click that, you hit Add, and then you can add in the dates and times for that election. All right, and the second thing, at the moment, the new VR forms have to be scanned in as a miscellaneous document in order to include the signature. Because this form changed a little bit, the other forms may not be grabbing that signature correctly. Enhancement has been added, so that will be fixed in the near future, but for now, you're just going to end up choosing the miscellaneous document, 8.5 by 11 portrait one-sided. All right, we didn't have much for the water cooler this week, but Marshall Tudor, who was one of our investigators, has left us and retired after more than 15 years with the SBOE. We'll miss him. He had a very interesting personality and was a nice guy. We really liked him, so we'll definitely miss him. All right, this is just the links to where the PowerPoints and the videos and user guides are. So you can find these recorded videos, which is this webinar, in this folder in FileZilla. And then you can find the user guides, the SOSA admin guide, the SOSA user guide, the OVRD user guide, and the election reporting user guide are all in this location. And then this is a direct link to steps and where you can access the presentations. All right, if you have folks in your office that may be new and they want to get registered for the webinars, they can use this link right here. You can just click on this and they can go in and register. All right, and that's it. That's all we've got for today. I would imagine, Amanda, are there any questions that we could answer now, or are we going to need to get back to some folks?
Yeah, I'm going to have to get that. Several of them just put in that the miscellaneous form doesn't work, that it's a link. Gary said he has to delete it. I'm going to have to go back and look at that, and we'll have to answer that after the fact. We'll go through and test it and get back to you on that.
Okay.
And but I've got the questions all down. We'll copy it and send it and see what needs referral on that and get back to them.
Okay. Yeah, and certainly everyone, if you have a question that you didn't get answered, feel free to put in a help desk ticket and we'll be happy to get you an answer. That's all for today. Thank you, Joan, and thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Erica.
We'll talk to you guys next time. Have a great day.